Another very critical, important function of the liver is it produces bile. Bile is what your body uses to break down fats more than anything. Excess bile is stored in the gallbladder. We're going to talk about a little bit about the gallbladder tonight, since I don't have a gallbladder class. The best time to talk about it is with the liver because they go hand in hand. And on the second page there I give a pretty detailed explanation of the liver duct system and the gallbladder duct system. And just to talk about that real quick, since we're talking about bile, is one of the most common surgeries performed today is gallbladder surgery. I can almost guarantee everybody here knows somebody who's had their gallbladder removed. Does anybody not know somebody that had a gallbladder removed? You don't know anyone? No, you're a rare exception.
I mean, not that I know.
Right.
They haven't told
There
me.
probably is someone.
Okay.
Has anybody here had their gallbladder removed? Okay, Steve. It's very common. What's really important in talking about the liver is that gallbladder dysfunction does not come from fault of the gallbladder. Gallbladder dysfunction comes from fault of the liver, okay, when the liver is overworked. What happens with gallbladder stones, gallstones, is that the liver is overworked from having to process all these different foods. And some people are, prone to it. There is some heredity involved in this, but again, that's why you have to be real careful the way we eat. But when the liver is producing bile constantly, and we're eating, say, fast food, fried foods, fatty foods, lots of sugar, things like that, and it's more than the liver can process, it starts to coagulate, it starts to thicken. And when it's too thick to move out of the body, it forms into stones, because there's nowhere else for it to go. And when you think of gallstones, don't think of a rock, okay? They're actually just coagulated bile. Combination of bile and cholesterol. Basically coagulated fat. The reason I say that is because when you think of gallstones, like you think of kidney stones, you think of those sharp little stones that they say it's worse than giving birth to pass one. I don't know if anyone can vouch for that. Mm-hmm. But the gallstones, less than 5% of gallstones are actually calcified. And if you go to a doctor to get checked for gallstones, he's not going to find a stone unless it's been calcified. A stone isn't going to show up on an x-ray unless you can see visual evidence of that, and you can't see visual evidence of that unless it's a hard stone. So in other words, people have thousands and thousands of stones in their gallbladder, their liver, their bile ducts, and they never know it. And oftentimes the first symptom is screaming in pain, running to the hospital, removing your gallbladder, which is why prevention is so important. And I think I mentioned that on the second page. If you don't think you have gallstones, think again. And even if you're not sure, do a cleanse. Because again, the first symptom is often surgery. Because there's so many stones in there, there's nowhere else for the body to go, and it's surgery or you're done. I don't know how yours was. Do you want to share your experience at all? Or I don't want to put you on the spot.
No, I'll share. Don't worry at all. So yeah, I was actually kind of lucky. My brother, 6 months before I had mine out, had his out, had been going to the doctor. This was when we were in college, so in our early 20s. Had for 3 years been having pain, severe pains, and they thought it was ulcers and everything else. Well, his liver just shut down. He turned yellow. He jaundiced. That's how they figured it out. And so, they took his out. So then a few months later, I passed some stones. And yeah, painful, very painful.
Yeah.
And so they checked, and they said there were no more in there. So like 6 months later, they checked again, and there were more stones. So that's when they...
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. And have you had issues since then?
I have IBS, irritable bowel syndrome.
Okay.
I mean, it's pretty much gone away since I cleaned up my diet.
Good.
But that, and I don't digest fats well.
Right.
Yeah.
So over 50% of people who have their gallbladder removed have serious problems for the rest of their life. Over 50%. And by the way, the doctors will say they have a 100% success rate in gallbladder surgery, because 100% successful surgery to a doctor is you didn't die and there wasn't a lawsuit. That's not a joke. I mean, that's a successful surgery. So they'll claim you don't need it. They claim it's a vestigial organ, like an appendix, and that couldn't be farther from the truth. So what happens when you have your gallbladder removed is it doesn't solve the problem, because the problem was coagulating bile and cholesterol. You haven't solved the coagulating bile and cholesterol problem. You've removed the organ that's been storing that coagulated bile and cholesterol. So now what happens is it continues to form the stones. They continue to deposit in the body, in the ducts, and often they start to form in the pancreatic ducts, because that is the next organ in line. So stones start to form in the pancreas, and then a lot of people have their gallbladder removed get pancreatitis. So you got to be really careful about that. Did you have a question?
What's the definition of vestigial?
Not needed, unneeded,
Okay.
unnecessary.
Okay.
Yeah. You know, like your tonsils, your appendix, which we all know, obviously God gave us all these things for a reason. But
Right.
As I say, I think
Okay.
they've now
and if you can live without it, to them it's vestigial, I guess.
Okay.
The tonsils?
I think
What's that?
they've now said that the appendix serves a purpose.
Oh yeah, yeah. They admit now that the appendix serve a purpose. The tonsils are your first line of defense for your lymphatic system. So yeah, they now recognize that all those
And what
organs
is the
are needed.
purpose of what was that other one?
The appendix?
Yeah.
It actually houses a lot of beneficial bacteria. It's very protective for the intestinal tract, and it also assists in digestion as well.
Which of course, when they take the gallbladder out, they take that out. So.
Right. Yeah. Oftentimes. Yeah.
Well,
So what
I don't
happens?
know why.
Last thing on the gallbladder. What happens when your gallbladder is removed? Your liver's still producing bile. That's its job. So what happens? You don't have a storage container. You don't have a storage sac for the gallbladder. So you have a constant drip. You have a constant drip of bile into the intestinal tract that you can't stop. So you'll have diarrhea, IBS, things like that, because it's like a leaky faucet, and you can't turn it off. So those are some of the repercussions of not having preventative maintenance done on your gallbladder. So I just highly recommend. Again, we're going to go through a liver cleanse here. Just remember the liver, gallbladder, hand in hand. The gallbladder's usually not the source of the problem. The gallbladder is just a storage container. So focus on the liver. You'll heal the gallbladder at the same time, and practice prevention so that you don't, have an issue like this come up, because it's very common.